Okay, welcome to our International Golf Podcast today. It's a truly international golf podcast. My name's Tony Gimnis. I'm based here in England. We have Michael Clayton joining us too, who's down in Australia. And Tony Jacklin's been kind enough to join us in Florida too. Welcome, Tony. Welcome, Mike. I hope you're both well.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony. We are. It's summer here, so it's nice.
Terrific. Well, as I say, it's a truly international podcast today. I've got two. I hope they don't mind me calling them two golfing gunslingers from the past. But the plan today is for us to preview this week's Masters, which obviously takes place at Augusta National. It all kicks off on Thursday. Now, of course, chaps, it's November. We're not used to the Masters taking place in November. What sort of obstacles is that going to present to the players this week?
Well, I mean, obviously, I think from a temperature standpoint, they've been fortunate. It's going to be in the 70s by the looks of it. But we're on the edge of a tropical depression here in Florida that's moving north. And the weather could be... It could be quite wet and rainy up there, and hopefully the days are long enough at this time of the year to get them through. But we'll see. I would think, but right now the weather looks like it could be a bit of an issue for the players.
And from your point of view, Mike?
Well, it's hard to know. I mean, it's not like it's always great weather in April, so I'm not sure what it's like there in November. But a friend of mine's playing, a kid called Lucas Michelle, who won the US Mid-Amateur. And he was over there in November last year playing practice rounds. So he showed me some video he'd taken of the course, and it looked like it wasn't in great condition, but I'm sure it'll be perfect now. But it was pretty spotty in November when he was there last year. But no doubt they'll have it perfect.
Well, he might have one up on the rest of the field. Then I can't imagine too many players have played Augusta National in November.
I don't know, probably not. But he was a pretty excited young kid to have a chance to play Augusta. So he flew over there he was over there for something else, I think. But he flew over there I think he stayed there for a week and played every day. And it was like a kid in Disneyland, I guess, for his first time.
Because from my recollection, they close the course all summer, and it doesn't open until very, very near the end of October. So. They have all summer long to prepare it and all the rest of it. But it'll be different. Those azaleas won't be in bloom for sure. We'll see a few of the trees in colour, I'm sure, and still looking forward to a exciting week. I think I don't think any of the favourites really know what they're going to do the first round, and I think the first round is very important in majors. You can't win it the first round, but you can certainly lose it, and very often the outcome is indicative of how the first round goes. I mean, regardless of what your name is, if you get off to a good start, I think you get engaged at a higher level mentally, and it becomes somewhat easier on that basis. But I mean, if you shoot, for example, 74 or 5 the first day, it's very, very difficult to get back in it.
Is that something you can empathise with, Mike? That feeling in the first 18 holes of actually being engaged in the tournament and giving you sort of lifting your spirits for the rest of the week?
Yeah, it's true, I think. I mean, not that I played anywhere near Tony's level in majors, but I know what it was like to shoot 75 on the first day of a British Open. But, yeah, that's true. You always feel like you want to be in the tournament. And you're right. If you're playing well early on, you just feel like you're in the thing. And if you're not, and you're battling to make the cut, and it's just you're way back on Saturday, and it's just no one ever wins. I mean, if it's not Curtis Strange or somebody who has a freaky tournament after shooting 80, then you're just never really in it.
Unfortunately, as you said there, Mike, you didn't get the chance to play at Augusta National. But Tony, I know you played a few times at the Masters. I mean, what are your memories of your of your outings at Augusta National?
Well, I played 9 times. The first time was in '67, and that was one of the best finishes I had. I was actually tied for the lead after 8 holes in the 3rd round, but I didn't have the experience at that stage to carry it off. But I think more than any other course, it's a course, horses for courses. I was a very long hitter. I wasn't short either, but there was a great advantage in my day for the Weiskopfs and Nicklauses who hit the driver a long way and could hit high long irons, you know, the 3 and the 4 iron. They could pick them and stop them on the greens, and it was you know, something that you had to do, especially on the par 5s. You know, I played they actually give you vase or glass for making eagles on the par 5s. I played 9 times and I never got a glass. So the par 5s weren't that kind to me back in the day.
Now, going into the event, all the talk, most of the talk is about one individual, Bryson DeChambeau. Apparently, he was down there last week or a couple of weeks ago, and he was bombing it down the fairway like he normally does. What do you think we're likely to see from Bryson this week, Mike?
Well, I saw it, yesterday where they ran through the clubs he was hitting into. I mean, basically, he was doing what Tiger was doing in '97, hitting wedges into the par 4s, and he was hitting 9-iron into 15 or something. I mean, that tee's gone back 20 or 30 yards from when Tiger played in '97. So it really looks like a pitch and putt job for him if he drives the ball out of the middle of the face and hits it as far as he's been hitting it. I'm assuming he's going to use this 48-inch driver. So
he might not. Here today, he was going to make the final decision today on that. It might still be something he's working on, but he's not totally sure whether it's time to pull the trigger on that one yet. That was the latest tweet I read.
Okay. Anyway,
there are reports he's flying at 400 yards plus. I mean, that's a staggering.
It's a different. I don't understand it. I mean, you know, apart from the advantage the long knockers had 50 years ago, the Nicklauses and the Weiskopfs there, I'm sure Mike was the same as I was. We hit a 7-iron, 150 yards, an 8-iron was 140, and a 6-iron was 165, 8-iron was 180. It wasn't. They had the advantage, as I said, with the longer clubs, the 1-iron, the 2-iron, the 3-iron, and the driver. But these fellas today, I mean, well, you can't compare. It's a different game altogether. I mean, it doesn't. It's not the same game as I played, and it's as simple as that. It's all about length, accuracy. Doesn't seem to come into it very much. I mean, there's plenty of room at Augusta off the tee. So the longer hitters, like Bryson and DJ, have got a huge advantage. You get, you know, the likes of some of the normal hitters like Xander and Hatton from the UK, who's showing some good form. Really, they're at a huge disadvantage because of the length.
Not only doesn't it,
along with Mike?
I'm just saying, not only is the game different from when we played, but it doesn't even resemble it. I mean, it's not even close to. I mean, Weiskopf, there are, I think, 4 women on the LPGA Tour who are statistically longer than Greg Norman was in 1985. So, and Weiskopf was the same length as Greg, really. So imagine Anne Van Dam and those long hitters on the LPGA hitting it past Weiskopf. I mean, it's ridiculous. But so clearly that, you know, that they're not better athletes than Tom Weiskopf was, but the equipment's just completely out of control now. So you know, well, I think Tony thinks the same as I, but the hope is that Bryson just makes the place look silly, because Augusta won't. I don't think they've got the power, and they won't put up with the place being reduced to a pitch and putt course. So they've got the power to just call a ball manufacturer and say, make us a ball, which I think is, the only way forward, really.
We see it through the same eyes, I think, Mike. I mean, all the other great games, soccer, cricket, whatever, the arena hasn't changed. 22 yards, I think, for a cricket pitch, and as it was 150 years ago. And same with soccer and the rest of it. But the powers that be in golf missed the boat, I'm afraid. And we're in a pickle now, in my opinion. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward.
Wow, there's no. I mean, historically, the freak in one generation, going all the way back to Ted Ray, has always been the norm in the next. I mean, Snead turned into Nicklaus, turned into Davis Love, turned into Daly, turned into Tiger, turned into Johnson. Now it's DeChambeau. So it's inevitable that in 10 years' time, the tour will be populated by DeChambeaus, which is, some people think that's good, and he's obviously a tremendous player, but it ruins the essence of the golf course. What's the point of the golf course if it's reduced into drives and wedges?
Yeah, it's
par fives, the drives and 7 irons. I mean, it's just.
Well, it gets pretty boring to watch. I know that for somebody like me that when we used to hit 3 and 4 irons into par fours for second shots, and and have to shape the shots, and now it's just smash and grab, basically. I mean, even if they're in the rough, you can hit a wedge out of the rough 150, 130, as these fellas can. So, but they wouldn't be doing it so readily if they're having to hit 4 irons out of some of them. So,
well, I think our side of the debate needs to be careful that we're not seen as just grumpy old men who think the world was better in our time. And sure, it needs to advance. But like as you're saying, the essence, the most important thing to me about golf, the players all move on, generations move on, the game, but the most important thing, the enduring thing, is the golf course. The old course, Royal Melbourne, Augusta, Shinnecock, and how those courses were intended to be played was incredibly important. Jones wanted players back on the 13th hole at Augusta with a long iron or a fairway wood in their hand, making what he called the momentous decision. Now, Bryson's talking about whacking it out on the 14th fairway, 120 yards into the green. Well, that's no decision at all. I mean, it's not a decision with a 5 iron, but I mean, back in 1967, when you'll know better than I, obviously, you were going into that green, I assume, with woods and 3 irons and 2 irons, and you better hit a great shot to go in there, which was why Weiskopf and Jack had such an advantage, because they were so good with those clubs.
Yeah. I was telling somebody a story the other day that Henry Longhurst was there in the early 70s, and I made a 9 on the 13th hole, and he had me sit down next to him and tell him about it. And I actually, I hit the green in 2, but rolled over into the back bunker, and then got cute with my 3rd shot and went in the water, and then chunked it back in the water, and then ended up making a 2-footer for a 9. And his answer was remarkable. And I said, well, what's so remarkable about it? He said, I would have thought you'd have missed that 2-footer and taken 10. But that was literally typical. I hit a perfect drive, and I couldn't get the elevation on the 3 iron that Weiskopf wouldn't have been hitting a 3 iron. He would have been hitting probably a 4 or 5 iron. But they could flight it so high and stop it on those greens. And it was just beyond my capability. I mean, you're physically unable to do that. It was, it's a massive advantage, the distance that the long players have.
I remember a funny story. John Bland, who you'll know, Tony, Blandy was playing with Lee Trevino in a seniors tournament in America, and Trevino hit a hybrid somewhere. And he turned to John. He had a great shot with a hybrid, and he turned to John and said, You know how many times I would have won at Augusta if I had this club in my bag?
Yeah. Yeah. I know he was right. I mean, of course, he got to not like Augusta at all because, that wasn't his game. He never featured there. And, as I said, we said earlier, it's very, you either like it or you don't. And it didn't suit my game. I didn't ever consider myself a great putter, but I must have been all right at one stage, otherwise I wouldn't have won what I did. But I didn't see myself as a great putter. And of course, the greens are tremendously testing as well. So it's a specialist's course, I think. And you either love it or hate it. I saw Crenshaw quote the other day that he said you don't have to have much imagination today as you did years ago to play Augusta, the way these guys are hitting it. And I agreed with that. I mean, somebody like Ben was an average hitter. He wasn't an average putter, but he was an average hit. Lengthwise, it was pretty average, as were guys like Tom Kite and his great pal. But he made up for it, on the greens, and that's how he got to the winner's circle. A bit similar, I think, in fairness to Mike Weir, the Canadian. I mean, he had about 96 putts or something the week he won, and it's hard not to win with that few putts. But it's very much a specialist course, and as I say, I think it's going to be difficult for the Hattons, who I've been watching closely. He's done tremendously well over here. He's broke through with wins, but it's hard to compete with guys who are knocking it 30, 40 yards past you.
What do you make of Tommy Fleetwood? I like his game.
I do too. No, I do
good.
too. Yeah. But they're up against it round there. I mean, he seems to. He's not short of distance. I mean, I suppose he'd drive it 300 yards. He's maybe sneaky long, as they say. But I still think the Adam Scott. I think one of your countrymen. He's Leishman. Again, he's been showing some form. He's a bit in and out. My real favourite, the one I'd like to see, is Rory, but he's a bit sort of how can I put it? You never know what you're going to get. He's not that consistent when it comes to, but he's got the game. If he's on, and the putter's working, he'll be the man to get another Grand Slam. But we'll see. We have to wait for him. But I think DJ, coming back after a rest, he's had a good week last week. He just got pipped into second place. He's going to be one of the main favourites. He makes the game look very easy, I must say. And anyway, we'll see. It's going to be exciting. It's compelling. You can't help but watch it. I can't anyway. It's CBS do a great job with it, and I'm sure it'll be exciting as long as the weather doesn't disrupt it too much.
Yeah, and Brooks was good last week too. 265s kept her on the weekend.
Yeah, 265 to finish.
He's always pretty dangerous.
Yeah, and he must feel after the break injury thing that he must feel like he wants to make an impression. I'm back kind of thing.
Yeah.
He's very, very, very confident. I've never seen anybody more confident than he is, and he's obviously back where he belongs.
The Rory thing's funny. I mean, you look at Weiskopf and Els and Norman and Miller. It's unimaginable that not one of those guys won one Masters between them.
Yeah.
I mean, how can they not have one? And I guess the historic question is, is Rory going to fall in with those guys and not win something that everyone just assumes that, well, of course he's going to win one somewhere, but you can't imagine that Weiskopf and Ernie and those guys couldn't win one there.
I have a theory with Tom. He's a great pal. In fact, he came and stayed with me last year. We had a couple of days together, and we see each other once or twice a year. But my theory with him was, Nicklaus was his hero, and I don't think you have to have heroes when you as good as he was. And I honestly think Tom was a bit in awe of Jack, and in 4 seconds there is, he should have won one of those. You would have thought, yep. And I don't know whether it was right or wrong, but when I was growing up, I was pretty tough mentally, and I didn't have any heroes. I respected the other guys, but I always felt if I was going to be in a tight situation in a major on the final day, and I was drawn with that individual, that I don't know. You don't want to be. You don't want to be thinking that anybody's better than you if you're at the top of this game, and I just think that held Tom back a little bit. But that's my personal. I knew him very well, and we played a lot of golf together, and he's a great guy. But what a talent he was! What an incredible talent, and majestic swing. Still, I saw. Well, because you can go to YouTube and see them all, but playing alongside him as often as I did was a great experience.
Can I just ask you guys a question for a second? You just mentioned Rory there, and obviously he's been trying to complete the career Grand Slam for 6 years now. How much does that continuous pressure work on his shoulders? I mean, is it a case that every year the pressure's getting bigger and bigger for him?
I don't see it like that. I think what I said earlier, I think the most important round for him this week is going to be the first round. If he can get in the mix in the first round, in the top 4 or 5, and get engaged in the thing, and his confidence is up, we might see him pull it off. But the thing with Rory is you're not certain. You go back to the Open at Portrush. Everybody expectation was there, but his head was in the wrong place the first round, and it was too much, even with a 64 or 5 the second round, to get back in the mix. He missed a cut by a shot or whatever it was. But hey, this is why we watch. Nobody knows. I mean, none of the players know what they're going to shoot first day and whether they're going to be have a weekend off or what. That's the exciting part about sports.
He looks though like if he looks like to me, if he plays his best, he's the best player.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Which
is a bit like Seve. I mean, Seve in my time was, when Seve played his best, he was the best out there.
He thought Seve personally thought Sandy was as good as. He said if Sandy Lyle played his best, I would be second to, whether that's true or not. But Sandy was a precocious talent too, and. You look at that second shot he hit out the bunker on 18 the year he won. A short hitter, a medium hitter, couldn't have hit that 7-iron and picked it off the top of the sand and got it over the lip of the bunker like he did. To an 8-foot. And this is where there's so many instances around Augusta where it's a massive advantage to be able to flight the ball high into those greens, and it's an interesting place altogether. And of course, there's so much history there. I remember Hogan, the year I played, we asked him for a practice round, and he was very polite. He declined, but he said he had a lot of work to do before Thursday. This was on Monday, and of course he shot. I think he shot 30 the back 9 one round, and he was in his 50s at that stage. I did get to play with him, but and I would have to say nobody did it like Hogan. He was it, you know, and I played it at everybody, but I never saw anybody with as much control as he had. I always felt this sort of, he was sort of double jointed, you know, and he got that lag. You know, the secret was the leg, firing the legs just before he completed the backswing. And he got that tremendous lag. But it was beautiful to watch. And I thoroughly enjoyed the experience of playing with him in 1970 in the practice round at Tulsa.
But I'm dragging the two together. I remember Tom Weiskopf and I, we were pitching for a job in Beijing, and we spent 4 hours together in a hotel foyer in China, which was amazing. He's such a great storyteller. But he was talking about Hogan. He said, every time I played with Hogan, he just made me feel so inadequate. Yeah. He said, I felt like a terrible player. Every time I played with him, he made me feel awful because he was so much better than we were. Yeah. And it was probably, obviously,
it's amazing for somebody like a Tom who swung so, you know, to say that. But Hogan, for me, of everybody I played with, and I was fortunate enough to play with everybody. You know, Sarrazin, I know he was older, and Byron, but in the mid '60s, I was privileged to be around those guys, and but Hogan was it. Period. There was nobody did it like him, and I was just so happy to have the opportunity to play alongside him. And it was the year he won 3 out of the 4 majors. He didn't play in the PGA in '53. That you know, that I took to the game. So I really, you know, read his book, The Fundamentals, and you know, that was what got me really started.
So how, in terms of length, was he a long hitter, would you say? I mean, he was pretty long for his time, wasn't he?
He was what, sorry?
A long hitter for his time.
Yeah, he was. I mean, his thing, funnily enough, like Bryson, he's doing this extraordinarily stiff driver shaft. And Hogan was about, you know, his driver shaft was very, very stiff. Mm. And there was literally nothing there. And I've had so many terrific discussions about Hogan. Some with Dean Beeman, who went, you know, Dean was commissioner over here for a long time. And when he was a 15-year-old, he was very good early on. He was a good amateur Dean. And he got to play with Hogan a lot during his teens, you know, mid-teens. Tells a lot of terrific stories.
Guys, it's fascinating listening to you both talk about modern times and indeed some of the older players. Unfortunately, we're rapidly running out of time on this podcast. There is one name I'd like to just throw into the equation. We have to mention him. He's the defending champion, Mr. Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, it's obviously a course that he embraces and loves. That being said, his form of late, you know, has been a bit suspect. And he might be a sleeping tiger going in. And if he gets off to a good start, it might light his fire and you know. But his game hasn't inspired me the last 6 or 7, well, when I know COVID came in and messed everything up, but he's struggled a bit of late, and not the real way you want to go in there, but he loves the place, and obviously you wouldn't, I would, the last thing I would say is he's got no chance, because he's got very much a chance, and he's still long enough, and he's actually swinging very well. It's just maybe a bit of confidence, and he might gain it there, might get it there. It's going to be fascinating to see.
Yeah, his swing does look, the last year, his swings look, I mean, last year at Augusta, his swing looked terrific.
Yeah, it was good.
he's been through so many incarnations of golf swings, but it did look really good. So
yeah,
you would never bet against him.
No, never, not me. No, he's a phenom, and he's that mental game of his is he's so strong mentally. It's amazing, and if he doesn't put too much pressure on himself, we could see him in the mix. Let's hope he is, because it would be that much more exciting for it. It really would, if he was in there with some of these young bucks.
So if he plays his best and Jack plays his best, who wins?
Tiger.
I think Tiger wins. Yeah.
I think in 2000, that year he had in 2000. It didn't matter. He just delivered, consistently delivered, and the equipment was better by then as well, and that's an advantage, I think. But Jack organised his life better than anybody else, and he's balanced. He had the design business to recharge the batteries when he was off the course. He had the family growing. Those three, his business, the golf course, architecture business, and the family, he balanced himself for 25 years with those three entities so wonderfully well. He came back to golf hungry every time, and of course, 18 majors, and God knows, 19 seconds, I think, in majors, and maybe 13 thirds. I know the record, and nobody's ever going to beat that. But I think I would have taken Tiger against him when he was at his absolute, when they were both at their best. It's a difficult one, obviously. Marciano, Cassius Clay, who the hell, making these comparisons is always difficult.
Where do you sit in that debate, Mike? Jack v Tiger?
Oh, I think Tiger's best was better than anyone, probably.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, I think. Because, obviously, Tony, you played with Jack way more than I played with him once, but I'm sure you played with him a lot. But I guess Tiger's short game was probably better.
Yeah.
Wedge plays, his bunker shots, and they were both incredible putters under pressure.
Yeah.
Which again, the conversation I had with Weiskopf in China, I said, "Who's the best putter you ever saw?" He looked at me like I was stupid. And he said, "Well, Jack was, of course." He said, "Did you ever see him miss a putt that he had to make?"
Yeah.
And I said, "What about Ben Crenshaw and Bob Charles?" He said, "Well, they had to be." Which goes back to your point about Crenshaw, was that putting was his game, but Weiskopf's point was Jack didn't have to be a great putter for 72 holes, but when he got on the back nine and there was a putt he had to make, he would make it.
He was very strong mentally, Jack, as well. Obviously, and he was putting on surfaces that weren't as good as what Tiger's enjoyed. That's another thing. We talk about these advances in golf, and the equipment that they use to keep the grasses perfect is also improved. I still think Locke was the best putter I ever saw. And of course you can't talk about putters without talking about Tom Watson, because I know he had a short period where he got the heebie-jeebies on 2-footers, but by and large he would run the table. And I remember playing with Weiskopf at Muirfield years ago, and there was Watson and Crenshaw on the putting green, and Tom said, "Who do you think? You know how much better putter Crenshaw is than you and me?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I think Watson is that much better again than Crenshaw." He put him. Watson was a phenomenal putter, and he holds so many 15-footers, 12, 20-footers. Anyway, it's nice to reminisce. But Locke, Gary Player would tell you now, if you had to have one player to pick to hold a 6-foot putt for your life, you say Bobby Locke. And I got to play with Locke a bunch of times in South Africa when I was younger. And the greens were horrible, but he had that way of, I don't know, putting that topspin roll on it, you know, and his body moved. They talk about, you know, keeping still and all the rest of it, but Locke was, you know, you can always find people that go against the sort of all the fundamentals. And Locke, when he came to putting, and then he lost the sight of his left eye in a car crash later on in his life, and he used to have to turn his head because he was so shut. And it didn't make any damn difference. He still knocked him in. He was fantastic to see, and unflappable, totally unflappable. Amazing.
Guys, as I said earlier, it's been fascinating listening to you both. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time. I want to say thanks to both of you for joining us on this podcast. I hope very much we can do it again soon.
That was great fun. Thanks, mate.
Enjoy it.
Thanks, Tony. Good to talk to you.
See you again.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, see you, mate.
Good.